Hi, I'm Sarah from Dolls and Daydreams. Let's talk about what kind of fabric you want to make your doll out of. There are good fabrics and bad fabrics, and I'm here to tell you just which ones you should be using. Meet Miss Tippy Toes. She is made up of hair fabric, body fabric or head fabric, body fabric. This is part of her body as well, but it's a different fabric. And then we have her legs and her socks and her toes, which are in fact her shoes. Okay, so for hair, you can use, as I've used here, felt. I recommend wool felt. Wool felt is softer, it is more resilient to cuddles and kisses, and it will hold up. It might get a little bobbly, but nothing like craft felt. And you can tell the difference between a good wool felt and a craft felt, because craft felt will often have sparseness on it. It will often have these bubbles almost instantly as you begin. And overall, it just doesn't feel as soft. The other thing you can use for hair is fleece. I happen to have some here, and here it is. It's stretchy and fun and soft to the skin. I really like it. I particularly like the polar fleece. It's non-bobbly and it has a bit more texture. I hope you can see that. The other fleeces, the cheaper fleeces, are flatter. You can see the difference. In fact, it's just the back side, but it really does look the same. It's not as stiff as a felt, but that's fine. You don't have to line it or anything like that, because remember, we have our skin, our flesh color on our head, and that's going to be our cotton, which stabilizes it just fine. Some ladies I do know have a tough time with the fleece and do choose to stabilize it with a layer of thin cotton underneath, and whatever works for you. I'm very used to stuffing a doll now, so I just don't get any lumps or bumps. You can also use cotton appliques for the hair. You can use it for sewn-on shoes as well. Always line the back of your cotton applique with heat and bond. I like it. It holds it nice and steady whilst you sew, because you're ironing it already onto your pattern pieces, and it makes the edge finished, especially if you don't have the satin stitch on your machine. You can always do a straight stitch, a triple stitch, or a tight zigzag around the edge. Really, it's totally up to you. There is something very sweet about cotton as hair, because you can change the color of it and patterns and fabrics. If you are going to use the cotton, I would suggest that you add an extra 1/4 of an inch around any kind of hairstyle, like bunches. This way, you place it right sides together, sew around your shape, and turn it. And that way, you won't have the raw edge. The raw edge will be across the face. You can also make that into a pocket and add it if you're on your sewing machine and you really, really don't like raw edges and you don't have the satin stitch. But all in all, satin stitch will work wonderfully on your machine. Just practice if you've never used it before. It's a great addition. The next thing we need to talk about is flesh tones. My most favorite cotton to use for the flesh is Kona. It does have a bit of texture to it, which can make it tricky if you're using fabric paints, but you do get used to it pretty quickly. It's a lovely high quality cotton. It won't stretch or warp, and it washes up really nicely. So there's not a huge amount of shrinkage. I really do recommend it. I like the colors as well. It has a nice big color range, so you can match your little one. Yeah, it holds up really well. In the hoop ladies, sewing ladies, Kona is just yummy. Now, for bodies, you can go with pretty much anything, even the poly blends. And I don't usually recommend poly blends because they have a tendency, if you iron them, they can shrink and stuff like that. However, if you just have I have a corduroy here. Love the sound of that. I love using different fabrics on the body because that becomes their little dress. And I just like the difference in textures as well. That's why I've used corduroy here. I think kids really appreciate texture just as much as they do color. I always love color. Yeah, so find a really nice cotton. You know, a good gauge with cotton, any fabric really, is if you can see your hand through the fabric, don't get it. I really, really don't like flannels. They look great in the store. They really do. But when you touch them and feel them and really pull them out, you'll be able to see your fingers through. It's because it's usually a very loose weave. Now, if I can see my fingers through, that means the stuffing's going to come through. You could line it. However, I do know that there are issues with fraying edges. It's a bit like using a really heavy upholstery fabric. It's a nightmare to work with, and sometimes the edges can come away if you've cut a little bit too close to your seams. All in all, I really like colorful bodies on my dollies, and if I choose to make an all-in-one doll, all in flesh color, then I just add a little pair of bloomers or panties to it in bright colors. And then we get to have fun with, this is my elephant, with clothes. And again, you can pick lots of different things. Hang on, does that mean you can use any fabric for doll clothes? Pretty much. I even use the dreaded flannel. I particularly like to upcycle as well. I have cut into the odd skirt now and again because I really fall in love with the fabric, and Dolly needs more clothes than I do, clearly. I do recommend that you cut out your pattern pieces with pinking shears or serge the edges if you don't have a serger or a stitch that will seal edges on your sewing machine. Just use the zigzag stitch. You've got to remember, clothes come on and off quite a lot. I mean, that's the fun of them, isn't it? Having a little cute outfit, taking it up or down, in fact, because my dolls have very big heads, so we take them down. Okay, let's talk about softies. In general, I use cottons as well for my softies, as you can tell from the elephant, but I do like a bit of fluff. Faux furs are really great fun. I'm just going to sort of give you a quick rundown. I really like the long hair, the bobbly hair. I have a long-haired rabbit here. Very, very fluffy, great fun, but your sewing room will be a mess, and don't wear black because you'll be covered from head to toe in little white fluff. The other thing I really love for my softies is, oh, I could just snuggle into it right now, Minky. This is Minky Swirl. It's got a lot of texture, but just general Minky is yummy too. Very, very soft. I particularly like Cuddle Minky. There are good quality Minkies and bad quality Minkies out there. You pretty much know as soon as you see it. It's sparse and it just sort of falls apart. But I really like Cuddle Minky. Go for it, try it. If you haven't tried faux fur for your softies before, give it a whirl. It's really not as scary as it looks.
Oh my goodness, I almost forgot about fleece. You can use fleece for your softies as well. It adds a lovely texture. It's nice and soft and snuggly. And of course, it's cheap and cheerful, quite honestly. Much cheaper than Minky. Now, the only issue with fleece is you've got to remember that it's super stretchy. So don't overstuff. I think I better do a video on that separately down the road for you guys. I don't recommend, however, wool felt or craft felt for dolls' limbs or softies' limbs, bodies, or the sandwich in general. The reason being is it's incredibly difficult. It's stiff and it's very unforgiving. So any little slight mistakes you will see, and turning is an absolute nightmare. There might be some naughty words said in that sewing room, and Dolly's ears don't like it. Even when you use Trusty's hemostats, I almost said that wrong again. I can't tell you how many takes I've done. Even if you use hemostats, it is absolutely impossible sometimes. So only if a pattern calls for you to use felt, use felt. Okay, enough about softies. let's get back to dollies.
Right, let's go on to legs. Legs, again, are made up of 2 different colored cottons or just 1 cotton. Peekaboo. So again, I like Kona for basic colors of softies or for flesh tones. And then, you know, if you go into Joann's or any haberdashery, you can find great fat quarters. Really fun. You don't have to buy tons. Limbs are really easy to cut out of. And little body sections. So I really enjoy the fat quarter section, I have to admit, because my collection of fabric is getting really large. Shoes. Again, wool felt, that works really well. You can use fleece. Remember, there will be a little bit of a stretch. It's no big deal. Just use extra pins if you're sewing it. And if you're using your in the hoop, I actually do prefer it sometimes. You can also use vinyl for your shoes, especially if they're removable. That makes them really fun, or faux leather. I always recommend you pre-wash your cotton fabrics. They are often laden with chemicals, unfortunately, and also there can be some shrinkage, and if mom or dad shoves them in the wash, I don't necessarily recommend that. Hand washing, spot cleaning. But if they're shoved in the wash, dolly isn't going to look quite peculiar afterwards. I hope this helps you pick the correct fabric for you. At the end of the day, as long as the fabric speaks to you and you know it's a good quality, I say go for it. I would hate for it that you would spend all this time, love and energy making your favorite dolly up, giving it to the one you love, and then within a couple of weeks it's falling apart. Unfortunately, this does happen. So do take care and really look for quality fabrics, konas, wool felt, really yummy soft fleeces. Look for things that you know will last a lifetime, because if that little one falls in love with that dolly or that softie has to last. I hope you've had fun with me here today. Please feel free to ask me any questions about fabric in the comments below. And of course, if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and like.